would like to call to order the Reconfiguration 2.0 meeting here at 7-ish on May 1st. Can I get a roll call?
Ronnie,
Yes.
Alexander, Julie,
Yes.
Ira, here, Megan,
Yes.
birthday person,
Here. Thank you.
all right, Kenna,
Here.
Rocky, Melissa, Dan,
Yeah.
Art, Ivan, Raphael, Mark, L,
Yeah.
Carol, L, Aaron, Jeff,
Here.
Dan R, Davis,
Here.
Helen,
Here.
Ronald, Mark M, Mark F, here, Carol D,
Here.
Ryan, Rick,
Yeah.
Dan,
Here.
yes, Lori,
Here.
Becky, quorum.
Thank you. Before I ask for a motion to approve this agenda, I'd like to tell you all about all the ways in which we have changed it this evening. So, 6.1 and 6.2 are being flipped. We want to hit the variations while we have lots of focus on measures. Sustain that there tonight. 6.4 is getting folded into 6.3. Any other changes? Are we good? That's good. So, can I have a motion to approve that? So
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
I'm sure everyone had a chance to review the minutes of April 26th. I think I would get through those.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Public comment. We're good, all right, no public comment, chairperson comments.
Tomorrow.
All right. I have no comments. So with that, we are going to move on to the newly minted item 6.1, variations on current models. So
Could you repeat what 6.1 is?
So 6.1 is now variation on current models.
We flopped 6.1.
We flipped them.
Oh.
So last week, we had asked everyone to kind of review what we had forwarded to Nagel and Gilbane, and if there was any big gap, to forward that to John. And we also asked that anyone who wants to see an addition go through the exercise of running an additional model through the heat map. So there's a couple of questions with regards to things that are missing, but we haven't seen additional models that have been run through the heat map. Now, I don't have numbers off the top of my head, I apologize. Darren,
Yeah,
what number?
I think it was 16.
Okay. So that one was already run through the heat map, and I'm actually, if you're comfortable, I'd like to hand it over to you.
Yeah, it's number 16.
No pressure, if you're comfortable, I'd like to hand it over to you.
It's 16.
Thank you.
The reason I think that we should consider 16, and I wasn't here the day when we did voting, this is definitely probably the most expensive model in terms of fundraising, fund referendum type of costs, but what it could do, and I was interested to see what Dan had to say about what he sent around regarding crossing the fund balance. Is kind of how this model works in the fund balance. What this does is it effectively creates a middle school campus on the Elm Place Indian Trail site. There's some interesting things that Nagel and Hardwick can do regarding utilizing both sites in order to do a 6 through 8 middle school for the entire community. What that then does is it closes all but 4 elementary schools, so it's a 5-school model. It has Edgewood serving elementary on a K through 5 basis for the southeast. It has Sherwood serving the western portion, obviously the boundaries would have to change, on a K through 5 basis as well. Wayne Thomas / Northwood would either be a brand new northern elementary school on that site or a refurbished Northwood to hold an elementary school as well as early childhood, correct me if I'm wrong, yeah, early childhood as well as some dual language sections, and Oak Terrace would remain as a dual language school. So, I mean, in my mind, what it does, it takes out a lot of the enhancements that need to be done to 3 or 4 schools because they would no longer be part of the configuration. It creates a brand new middle school, which is very progressive in terms of creating a middle school philosophy or a middle school process that the whole community would buy into. It does have some large elementary schools, so Edgewood would be a 5-section plus administration elementary school. The new Northwood / Wayne Thomas, whatever we call that, would be two dual language, 4 monolingual, and then the early childhood center. And Sherwood would serve as a 4-section monolingual campus or school. So that's it in a nutshell. I think what we'll find, from some of the construction costs we talked about early on, a new middle school campus is going to be X, big number. I'm not going to say what it could be because we don't know what it's going to be yet. But as Helen brought up when I first presented this, you either build a new elementary school in the north or utilize Northwood with some enhancements to serve that market, which would take the total price tag down. But at the end of the day, there's some of these numbers that Dan has sent around that we haven't really talked about yet. It would be interesting to see how long we can stay positive in fund balance. And my anticipation would be a lot longer than a lot of these.
Do you envision new construction or?
It would be a new construction, probably a new construction middle school only.
So knocking down Indian Trail?
Knock down the Indian Trail and Southwest, and create a 6 through 8 campus that will serve the entire community. So obviously there's traffic issues at the high school, and I know that CFAC looked at that. So I mean, that's things that can be.
So I just want to clarify, when we say middle school campus, if people are listening at home and for the public here and for everybody here, to say you could distinguish it not only by its location, but by the fact it is 6 through 8. So just to be clear, because people in their middle school campus, and I wouldn't be surprised if people defaulted right to 5 through 8, which I can't speak exactly for the testing, but I think it certainly at some point it was perceived as having some negatives on community values, the 5th grade there. I understand it has some educational opportunities. The other thing, as far as if the number one thing is an equal curriculum or an equal experience or equal opportunities or consistent, whichever way you want to go at it, obviously having a brand new single middle school will guarantee that experience for every child by the time they reach 6th grade. Not an educator, in my mind, I've always thought that that was maybe a more important place for limited resources. That's why I keep asking the question. I'm not, being shy about saying, and it's not all that well informed, but I suspect that that'd be a place I would think limited resources would have a great impact. And also that shared burden. There's one school north, there's one school south, there's one school west, there's one, everybody gets, it also even probably smooths that out as well, equal situations for all students. It's probably going to have the greatest, the least variations in the experience that children will have through the school system. I don't think there would be huge commute times. And then as far as it being expensive, we got something to show for it, a brand new school. And the other thing is I don't even see why Northwood would be a new school. It would be an elementary school. I think it would have a lot easier turning it into the elementary school you would like rather than the middle school we would like to see. It wouldn't take that as much capital to do that. So So I just want to say that it addresses, beyond explaining what is the plan, what captures my imagination about it is how many of the overall values. You can say it's not neighborhood schools, but it is, in a way, a school in every element of town.
So I think, and I think you touched on a lot of important considerations. And I think philosophically, we're all sort of much closer to this than most people. And Darren, you made the point that this one really hits the educational objectives. But in terms of that other axis we were looking at with community feedback, it would require some heavy lifting.
Yeah, I mean, the concept that I brought up last week was talking about cost benefit. There's definitely a cost here, but I think there's a benefit that needs to be uncovered to determine if this is a benefit to people. See a tax increase for a period of time to get fund balance, an educational outcome. Newer buildings, all the buildings updated and remaining, as well as the fund balance that stays in the positive for, the longest one we have here, and this is just, again, we have to talk about it, but it's 2036, I think, we're looking at it, which is really not that long.
No, so my question, and I want to hear what you have to say, but my question is this something that we would want to pursue with Nagel at this time, or do we want to parking lot this and wait a week and a half and see what the first round of numbers come back like? Because they've got a lot of drawings that are in play right now, and that's I'm not.
Are you asking me?
I'm asking the room, and I want to hear what you have to say. Go ahead.
You had mentioned that there was some interesting things Nagel Hartridge could do with this. You said there was some interesting things Nagel Hartridge could do with this site. It sounds like maybe you've had a conversation with them.
No, I've not had a conversation with them. We've had conversations about.
He did make a comment. Don did make a comment last week about.
That was,
Do we have any
5
idea?
through 6 and 7 through 8.
So do we have any idea how this would actually fit on that site?
We have to talk to the architects about it. There are ways that both sites can be connected with the structure.
Across the street?
Absolutely. So, I mean, there's, again, I'm not an architect. This is a big enough site combined. We're talking about doing a 5 through 6 and a 7 through 8, utilizing the same buildings. There's probably a way to do a 6 through 8 with a brand new structure that ticks all the boxes that we were trying to do, or what was trying to be accomplished within the school campus. But yeah, it's TBD. I mean, it has to be determined.
I mean, obviously, it would be a very efficient way of deploying resources, and I think, one of the benefits here would be that in terms of boundarying, when you only have 3 buildings, it wouldn't be you wouldn't have the issues. And one of the things that all of our models are predicated is you're going to be moving lots of people. You could take big neighborhoods and move them all to these 3 modeling buildings. So that's something to be said.
There's almost a natural break with Central Avenue and then the highway, right, the west side, the south side, and the north side. Almost.
I think that you're underestimating what it takes to put together an elementary school. That it's not as easy to turn a middle school into an elementary as one would think. I mean, you have the restroom. Most elementary schools, at least the modern elementary schools, have a restroom, attached to the classroom instead of way down the hall. One of the problems I always had with Lincoln School was the staircases. I was subbing one day 17 years ago, and a kid on the 3rd floor started sliding down head first. The only reason he didn't mash himself into the radiator is I broke his fall when he hit me in the knee. Instead,
that's a problem in all of our buildings.
So Northwood's a single-story school.
Edgewood, if you were going to turn into an elementary, and that would be 2 or 3 different levels. It is a mass of staircases, and again, the restrooms. I think that looking at that and the proximity to a usable playground, it would all have to be a very long way out for the children to use. If they are in a classroom that's close in, it would be a hike to get the kids out to having the playground on one far end on a long School.
So John,
You're-
we already had, Nagel did some work on Edgewood as an elementary, correct, with
It was.
Last part of the middle school campus
with the
had it as an
referendum. It was called,
elementary.
it was, yeah.
Middle school campus had both Northwood and Edgewood as
look,
elementary schools.
I don't wanna get too far afield, but again, I mean, this begs the question, in terms of what we're doing with these other options, do we wanna pursue this now? Do we wanna hold it in abeyance? Rick, please.
I strongly support the concept of looking at a whole lot of options because then the community knows we really did our job well.
Sure.
But I feel uncomfortable throwing this additional task on Nagel Hartree at this point. I think that your idea of waiting a week and a half until we get some preliminary results is probably spot on. Though, again, if we've already got a lot of the elementary school work done, that's great, and that is hugely helpful. And I don't know that, we're talking, what, 1,025 to 1,350 students at this school where Indian Trail is. And I'm pretty sure you could do it. Especially if you kept you wouldn't have to put a structure over the road, I don't think, but because you've got the pathway under the road, you can keep the auditorium, do arts, maybe you keep a gym over at a place, you tear down the stuff in the middle. So there's there's stuff to be said about this, but I just feel uncomfortable throwing this additional task on. The one thing we might consider is just a quick look at whether this model and number of students that we'd be talking about would allow us to use the work that was already done by Nagel Hartree on Edgewood and Northwood. So maybe we just ask that question to see whether that work has already been done.
They were not looking at the same capacities for those sites with the middle school campus. They were still smaller buildings with, for sure, like kindergarten is just a standout because it has its own kind of
Right.
site requirements. Like it wasn't going to support as many sections of kindergarten as either one of these
I
would.
think we're even talking the administration there or something else too. So, yeah, I think this is too many new thoughts, but I think it's important to keep it on the table at least until we see the numbers.
I'd love to hear from other people in the room, kind of how you guys feel specifically with this one, and I think, we'll hear. The question is,
And from John,
do we send anything new to Nagel now, or do we cool our jets for a
I would
little
say
while?
not at this time. I give it the week, 10 days. We're trying to get to the 15th. We're going to get our first real set of tangible data from them. I can talk to them about just forget everything around, just fit of that school on the site. Because it's not so much the building, it's once you start adding parking and trying to how much play space is left and traffic flows. I don't want to get that far into it even, but I think if we can just try to get a fit of a box and parking and some of the big pieces and just what the hell's it look like?
So, and just to be clear, this is new on that would be a new building.
It's up to, if the architects can figure a way.
Well, my initial reaction is you're going to try to reuse our place as much as you can because that ravine will cause a problem down the road from a zoning perspective.
Can't rebuild.
That's going to change.
So that
we have to
really
rehab that
diminishes your site
building.
size.
Yes, and if that ends up becoming a quote ravine again, that's going to change how that site's going to be used or usable for us. So you're going to want to try to salvage our place as much as possible to keep where it's sitting. Grandfather there.
not to put a spanner in this or make it even more difficult, because I think we're trying to smooth it out, but the community, the Highland Park Community Building or Highland Park Community across Elm Place.
Community house.
Community house is approximately an acre.
Yeah.
It's owned by the city. It's leased. And they had an option. I don't know if they ever exercised an option. If staff could just make a quick conversation, because then Nagel Hartree could think about that providing parking. I think I know what the market value of it is, or was assessed at one time during their negotiations a while ago. I don't think it's prohibitive, I don't know what the city would think about it, but you could pull some site parking off the site, even if it's faculty parking as opposed to student, across. And I'm saying as he cites that building, and if you do have to communicate over, I thought the bridge is gone, I thought the tunnel was gone, or gonna be gone, or they want it gone.
I would like it gone, but I believe it's part of the state issue that they can go away, because that's a state highway or a state road right there. It's not a local road.
No. That the use of the tunnel is an issue. You were saying we don't have to bridge it because we have the tunnel.
It
I
is,
think it
it
needed some repairs.
needs some significant
Do
repairs.
you think it could stay as a functional place to have that amount of
Potentially.
activity? Okay,
Potentially.
because if you move the building to the front and the play space to the back, move the building towards Sheridan, that's not particularly long bridge, and you see those at hospitals all the time. A parking lot bridge, a parking lot bridge. It's in the scheme of the construction, I don't even think it's that prohibitive.
Okay.
No, yeah, we're getting way into the
We're
weeds.
getting way into the weeds.
I was just saying, as we cited, those were
Yeah.
the two things that I think have relevance to citing it, because you would bridge it at its shortest part, is what
Yeah.
I'm saying, and move children's play space, even if they're middle school, reverse it with the new structure. That's all, I'm just trying to think that's a more natural.
No, I will test it with Don on a timescale. My gut's gonna be is it's after the 9th or 15th or somewhere next weekend, whatever that date is. We'll be more serious about it.
Melissa and then Dan.
Yeah, I'll just weigh in on the elementary school piece of this. It's a very interesting concept, but in addition to converting 2 middle schools into elementary schools, you'd also be losing Indian Trail, which is one of our better one of our better elementary schools, because it does have so many bathrooms per classroom, and it's just one of our better elementary schools that we'd be losing.
I'd like to ask, you mentioned the number one thing on the survey was consistency. I remember that. And this is really an interesting concept, but I think the second most thing that stood out on the survey was the,
Best ringtone of the day.
was the cost. My recollection was that the survey taken last June is fairly the same as the most recent one, where it showed that once you got over $100 million for this referendum, it's running a very big risk of passing. I was in awe at the number of configurations that have been studied, and I applaud everybody for doing it. But I think if you want to narrow it down to a couple to get into more detail on, is there some way that Nagel Hartree at this point can focus on which of these can be built for $100 million? My guess is that this one, this 16, wouldn't be. Plus, it's very similar to the one that failed last time because it was a big new building that ate up most of the budget.
Yeah, no, right now, Nagel,
I was gonna say, the point, I think that this, again, this is not, I submitted because it's a different direction, it's not something I think is the best solution, but it's something we need to test out in the community during community engagement in terms of cost benefit. So what, I agree with you that the survey said, in a vacuum, 100 million, that's our limit, but if you said 100 million and building a brand, 150 million, building a brand new school district with all brand new schools, people's opinion of 100 million might change. So the point of
It didn't say 100 million either.
No, I agree, but the point is, there's a very specific point that we understand the community may not, which is we may be back doing this again in 15 years if we go with one of these other options.
At some point, though, I think that, we've been at this for almost a year now. At some point, you have to get out of the sales mode and say, gee, if we just showed them that, maybe they'd spend another 50 million. I think you have to take what you've been given several times as to what the majority of the community is willing to spend. And the age of the population that is going to form a majority, and you say, are they willing to spend that money no matter how nice it is? I think there's a lot of people particularly in my demographic, that feel that the education in Highland Park right now is excellent. They think it's a terrific school system, and there's a lot more to it to make it terrific than the facility. It's the teachers, it's the curriculum, and I think that if you go above that 100 million, maybe 110, 20, who knows, that we're just spinning our wheels right now. At some point, you have to narrow it down to about 3 or 4 good solutions. This one looks like it has. I'd like it if it was under 100 million. If it's 200 million again, I wouldn't like it.
And I think our process will show that. The process that we have in place with Nagel Hartrey, I think will show us kind of how that plays out, and we'll have the opportunity to talk about it again.
But in the meantime, you're not going to be getting those numbers for what, another 2 months?
Yeah.
When are you going to get numbers from Gilbane?
Oh, by the 15th, that
Yeah,
presentation.
we're going to have them before the community forums,
That's
so
what
that
we're
when we go to
targeting.
the community forums, we have numbers to talk to the community about, so
2
we can
weeks, 2
understand.
weeks.
And that'll be the first pass. Well, that'll have some numbers. It won't be all the numbers. It won't be final total. It'll give us some idea of where we're heading in the numbers for all of these, and then we'll have the final within 2 weeks after that. So we'll have all the numbers by the end of the month.
Okay.
On
And
what
then
we've
is the
already
intent to
selected.
narrow it down?
And then that will tell us if we need to add back, take out, put in, that'll help us form the next level of decision making.
And the next level of community feedback, because then we go to the forums and we show this range and we get feedback on what the flexibility is for the value proposition.
You know, it seems to me that what Darren has brought up is basically 2 questions for this group tonight. Is, do we consider this configuration, and do we send it out to Nagel Hartrade today or wait a week or 2?
Right.
The second question is decided after the first. To me, this is the first configuration, and maybe I wasn't paying close enough attention to it. This is the first configuration that really meets a lot of needs of the community. It puts something in all places in the community. It's going to make some people angry, and it may be expensive, to your point. But we don't know any of that until we view it, and I would think that it would be worth our while to do that because it stops us from moving a lot of people all over the city. It is forward-thinking, and we need to be forward-thinking because you know what? You can't go back to the community that. The last time this district passed a referendum was 1997. Okay? That's 20 years ago. You can't go back all the time to seek something, and you need to have some vision in what you're looking at. And to me, and I don't know whether I would support it or not support it, there's certainly issues with it in terms of reconfiguring middle schools to be able to take into account primary school kids. They have different needs. They have different requirements. We all know that. But it seems to me that what we're being asked to do right now is it a configuration that's worth considering? And I personally think it is. And 2, is it, if we think it is it something we should send to Nagel Hartrade today or wait a week or 2 as Ronnie had suggested? That's all that's going in front of us right now, I think.
Well, I think John answered it. If we're willing to have it considered, John has already said pretty much being so close to Don and Nagel Hartrade, the manner in which it could get a theoretical look now, and that will work for Caesar's plan.
The only concern I have, and put 2 and 2 together, is the community feedback. If we're going to consider something like this has to be part of community feedback. Otherwise, we're just going to be arguing whether the community would support on the cost benefit or anything like that. So I don't know how that falls.
If we're looking at after the 15th, then that forecloses the possibility of asking any questions about this on the mailer. However, it gives us plenty of time.
We're not doing it. There's no configurations in the mail.
So I didn't mean a configuration, but sort of gauging, putting out something that would sort of lay the groundwork, not a configuration per se. It does, however, give us time, if we do this after the 15th, to test the waters of community forums.
Well, just one comment on testing the concept. equivalency in education programming isn't necessarily everybody goes to the same school in one building.
No,
You know,
equity.
we're talking about
Let's be
fairness and
really
equity.
clear.
You
Sorry.
There's multiple ways to, achieve that. That's all I'm saying.
Question about your last comment. So if we went to the community forum with this, we wouldn't have numbers, right, at that point?
Well, no, we would if we decided mid-May.
If we can fit another one in, there is just the reality of volume to get it done by the end of the month.
Right, if mid-May we decide that this thing has teeth and we want to pursue it, I think we could pursue it. And
And maybe as we're seeing some numbers, maybe something else will drop off.
that's right.
You don't know.
It is a natural bookend. It makes it very easy for people to book at what their options are. I
Yeah,
mean,
this-
it's a natural.
Yeah, what I was going to say earlier was this option is different enough from all the others that it's worth having for precisely that reason, as this is the kind of outside the box, arguably solution.
I agree, so let's, absolutely, yeah. And to Ken's point, reflecting on the fact that it's been 20 years since this district
Here's the
passed
big
a
budget,
referendum.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, we want to be mindful of the bottom line, but we also want to get maximum value and long-range benefits.
And arguably, I mean, to Darren's point, this is arguably the 50-year solution, potentially.
Other variations that we either, go ahead.
Just in addressing the concept of like a bookend, because I think that, when I think back to when we had up on the wall the arrangement of them all, and with model 16 fulfilling like the highest academic one, but arguably the lowest community one, if you look at the flip side of that, the one that fulfilled the highest community point, the lowest educational point, model 11. I'm not necessarily saying that like I want to put that in for contention. I'm just saying to address the concept of a bookend of here is the most progressive, forward-thinking one that we've got. Here's the one that basically elicits the least amount of change possible, besides literally doing nothing. Like, do we feel like that would be a waste to put in front of people to say like it does not scratch the itch of the educational changes? I'm just trying to I
feel
just want to put it out there and say
24 kind of covers the what it would look like without a referendum. How can we use, kind of what we have? I think that's kind of the purpose of 24.
Okay.
The issue with 11 is that it has the 3 middle schools, which we've already found that the community surveys and feedback have said people are comfortable with the 2 middle school solution, and all of our educational research supports that our population size has less opportunity in the 3 middle schools. So I don't know that we want to reopen the 3 middle school discussion if we've already kind of supported from both the community and the educational standpoint that it's not as viable. Anyone else?
Go ahead,
Let me argue the other side of that. By having number 11 in the mix still, because that model received so much support during the past election, I think it's worthwhile to continue to get feedback on it throughout the process, so that at the end, either we choose this one or we don't choose this one, but at least we'll have strong feedback one way or the other from the communities at several steps during the process.
And you don't feel like we covered that already with the community feedback and the survey results?
I think that Nagel Hartridge doesn't have to do anything with this model because it's basically done. And so it would be just carrying, if the goal right now is not to reduce the models down to the bare minimum to put these out in a survey, then I think adding one more model is not detrimental to the process.
Well, I just want to caution, there is a volume. We're already close to a tipping point at volume.
Yeah, we've already pushed off the forums.
It doesn't mean I can't ask a question on this topic to see how like-kind it really is. Because it's also a costing issue with the Gilbane side, to make sure it matches.
Well, Gilbane's already done the costing on this.
But isn't
Not using these parameters.
that basically in effect, there is no referendum passed, this is the direction you go. We didn't
No,
kind of-
that's what 24
Is that
represents.
24?
That's
Okay,
24.
sorry. I'm getting confused by 24 and 11 because they're.
So,
But 11 has 3 middle schools continuing, sustaining.
let's talk
renovating.
about, this is actually something that we need to talk about, I think. When we look at these, one of the considerations that we brought up and put all of these through was what happens in the absence of a referendum? Is it viable? Can it be implemented fully or partially? I think it's such an important question to ask, but I also think it's as important that we not let that question hold back that kind of progressive visionary piece that Ken touched on, because this opportunity doesn't come along so frequently. So what happens in the absence of a referendum, short or long term, isn't 2.0's work. Ideally, what we hope to see go to referendum is the work of 2.0. And I would hate to see us lower our hopes and expectations for 112 for fear of what the community may or may not support. I mean, it's an important question, and I don't mean to split hairs here, but I don't think we can let this hold back our best hopes for 112.
So, I just had a question, Art, why do you think all the work's been done? Because don't you need to figure out where, one of the reasons why you want to look at this, I think, is because it might reduce the level of construction and where you need, full-day kindergarten and things like that.
Right.
I don't know, is it the case that if you have this configuration, you wouldn't have to add any rooms or anything to other buildings to do full-day kindergarten? Or do we know that?
You shouldn't.
That's true.
And all of these configurations, I think, are covered under what Gilban's already looking at. And so, in the model, in the spreadsheet that Gilban gave us a couple weeks ago, that showed the 12 buildings under, no changes. I think that answers your questions on all the add-ons.
But then we are putting our money, with or without a referendum, there's going to be that green work and that HLS work. So we're putting that money into 3 middle schools.
Yeah,
which,
I'm not saying that this is, I'm not attaching any positives or negatives to this configuration itself. I'm not trying to say this is a good idea or a bad idea. What I'm trying to say is that it just gives us an opportunity to get more community feedback on this specific model because it garnered so much attention during the election.
So here's the question.
And it also requires very little construction costs.
I hear you, and I guess, we need to decide, are we asking Gilbane and Nagel to price out options? I mean, I don't know if everyone else in the room would endorse this.
Well, I'm not sure whether it's surveying the community or not, but this might be a contract, to your point, if there's no construction, yes, the green the HLS cost, you can say, yes, we do this, if we think it's suboptimal educationally, but we can compare it to what we're actually paying for in these other models, and then people can make an assessment of, do they think that the investments in the other models outweigh the negatives? I mean, so it creates a contrast.
To Melissa's point, I think 24 speaks to that, because I think that we already know that 4 out of 5 survey respondents are comfortable with moving to 2 middle schools. And we know the costs associated with bringing 3 middle schools up to all of
we know
where it needs to be.
And the staffing challenges.
I agree.
I mean, to me, it's moving in the wrong, it's throwing good money after bad by
It's not listening to the community feedback, it's not listening to the education all the things we've talked about. I just think it doesn't seem like the best choice.
And are we supposed to be value-free? Sorry.
It's a good question, Helen.
Are we supposed to be value-free as a representative group? Are we supposed to only regurgitate what surveys say, the best of our knowledge, and put those on the table? Or are we here also initially, we were selected for having points of view, involvement in schools, values about schools, wanting to forward to improve the D112. Are we supposed to be completely value-free of our own values? I don't think so either, and that's, I think, why we're questioning why three middle school model should be there.
Right,
If
and
we don't believe in it, if there's nobody at this table, if there's nobody at this table, forget what the community and the cost or whatever, for the moment only.
it doesn't have to
Doesn't
be nobody
believe-
or everybody. I mean,
Doesn't believe that Highland Park should have three middle schools going forward. How can we ask our resources to be, and supported by a good amount of data as well, but I never saw, I mean, I've been trying to, as these were being tested all along, I've been kind of negative on the process, and it said it held the place, we had to uncover it, we had to learn more about it and so forth. I think we know what it means.
So just observing the conversation so far, in this room, we're rehashing a lot of the different tensions that exist in the community. Some people are advocating, I'm not saying people are inhabiting these positions for a visionary plan for particular reasons. Some people are suggesting we need to give the most kind of restrictive plan for various reasons. And I think one of the challenges is not that we should not talk about these things, I think we should, but I think one of the dangers is that where we are in the process, when we simply talk and a few people sort of push the room one way or the other, that may be perceived later on as a problem. So I'd actually like to suggest that we just begin voting on stuff like this when we have decisions to make, that we talk about it for a certain amount of time, and if the question is like, should we put this in, we then do a show of hands or whatever as a way to sort of move on, talk for a little, and then make decisions where people are on record, where everyone says how they feel about it.
I'm all over it. Are you guys comfortable with putting this to a vote? Okay. Dan, are you voting?
Actually, I just wanted to add another criteria for voting. With this number 11, is this plan even able to meet one of the basic preconditions of, I think, for seriously considering any of these plans, that if it's run through the financial model, it's not going to go into a negative.
So the reason the contrast is important is, if you can imagine, let's assume that the cheapest plan we had was, this is not the case, but let's assume it was $300 million, our alternative, or our alternative is to, we have a $50 million deficit at 2030. Well, there's a certain point where I would say the cost is so much, or the difference is so much that, maybe that's not a bad idea to go with the free middle school, approach. Yes, there are educational deficiencies. So that's the only reason I bring it up. But you're right. Is this going to stand on its own? No, it won't. Right now, but in contrast to something else, it might look better. Does that make sense?
Potentially. With what we've said as a basic cut, will this get us to make it under 25% fund balance by 2019 or 2020? Will this even pass that?
No, but again, this is something that came up in the last referendum. People said, well, you're investing X million dollars to, $200 million to save $3 million. Would you make an investment like that?
Right.
That's what I'm trying to say. By just keeping this, and if we don't do any work on it, keeping this in the back pocket and thinking, okay, how would this look?
Again, let's not confuse what the next potential round of budget deficit reductions looks like and what a referendum looks like. I feel like we need to be really clear on that. And they're not mutually exclusive, and while we would hope that the next referendum closes the same schools as the next DER, I don't know. Quite a few of you are in here tonight. I don't know what our new board is going to look at, if in the likely event that we don't pass a referendum. But I don't know if this would be it. But I think Davis raised a good point that, not to sound cynical, but we're circling the drain here. So the question is, do we want to vote on whether or not?
Well, I think Davis is right, and I said 20 minutes ago, we had two initial questions before us, and I would take Darren's first suggestion that we consider the 16 as a motion, if you make it as a motion here.
I make it as a motion.
I'll second it. That we consider this Model 16.
One just procedural question. The idea is we would consider it now, or we would wait a week?
Well, wait, I think that's question number 2.
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor of considering number 16? It appears that the ayes have it.
What was that?
Then you have your second motion, Darren.
Well, I wasn't sure if we should be.
Well, I think, I mean, to the point, the second motion, I think Josh stressed that it's not possible.
Yeah, so we're gonna hold on. So do we wanna ask the same question of number 11?
Whether or not we're gonna consider it now or later, wasn't it?
John already.
John's gonna work his way. Yeah, it's okay.
And by shut it down, I mean finessed it.
Yeah.
Don't box the way.
No, just John's gonna handle how it's priced out.
So the question is, do we want to, is there a motion to consider number 11?
So moved.
Wait, what was your motion? Sorry.
Is there a motion to consider number 11?
I'm moving it. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of considering number 11?
For the same reason as the other.
All right. All those opposed?
We just got really efficient.
It's like 10 months in, right? Okay, great.
Can we circle back to the fact that 17 and 20 are like essentially the same thing?
Yes.
Like, have we come back to that point where that may be saving, I mean, I don't want to think about like saving money in terms of paying the architects or whatever it is that we pay to do or whatever, but if 17 and 20 are essentially the same thing, then adding in number 16, I'm confused.
So 17 and 20, it's the difference, I think John said, of a single drawing.
Yeah, it's literally one drawing.
So
So to take out the 1 and try to put 6 in?
we're not doing them any great favors, but I think it's important for all of us to understand that we're not really looking at 8 distinct models right now. We're looking at 7 and 8.
Yeah.
You know, and again, when you look at the 7 and change, the question is, do we have, are they sufficiently distinct? Do we cover all the ground we want to cover? Do they answer all the questions we want to ask? So with that, any other variation? Anyone wants to talk about?
Well, the fact is, there's a number of different things that have been talked about that can be created from the data that we're going to get.
Right.
For example, the model that I've been pitching is basically 2 except a new middle school and Ravinia site. And we'll have all that information in our hands when we get the stuff
We know
back.
that, so I-
So I don't really feel that we need to add that as an option, because it is almost by definition an available option.
So that answer is helpful insofar as the question is, are there any gaps that will not be traversed in the course of the next 2 weeks that we need to really see addressed?
So I wanted to raise one issue, which is, which I think might actually be solved by the pursuing Model 16 as one of these. It's just the outplaced site and giving it, sort of having it included in the process as one of our potential sites for middle school. I think that that's something that hasn't been ever really fully pursued as part of this process, like what it would look like to get to a larger middle school on that site compared to what we have now. And I want to make sure that we have something like that in the drawings that the architects are looking at it as we get through the process. So, there were a couple other concepts among the 20 that had, or how many we had that had outplaced as a 6 to 8 middle school, which would probably be about, in place of Northwood. And I think that we don't necessarily have to have one of those concepts be in one of those we consider, as long as the architecture going through the process of seeing, what it would take to get that site up to having 600, 650, 700 students. And I think that, I just want to make sure that we don't get to the end of this, and we know about the challenge that Northwood Wayne Thomas site. We've been through all those, architects have been through those in the past, so I'd like to make sure that we have at least a sense of what the alternative is, right? If we don't go with the second middle school being there, that we have an idea of what it would take to get out.
They do that, didn't, at one time before they got to the middle school, and they were studying the capabilities of each middle school.
We've done fit of 800, I want to say 1,000, but I don't want to swear to that.
So Alex, when you say that site, what do you?
I went back and looked at, I went to the library archives and I found a report of the District 107 report of the Citizens Committee on declining enrollment from 1981. And this is the report that led to the closure of this building when it was still an elementary school. And it actually said that in the early 70s, 1973 at one point, there were 656 students at Elmwoods. So we, at some point, that school was able to, on that property, was able to sustain a substantial more number of students than it has today. And the question is, for those of us who've been to the building, and I think most of us here, we know the condition that it's in some parts of it, and we know that it probably would take a substantial investment to get it up to. But I would like to know what that would cost and what it would look like, to get to that point. So if Model 16, I don't know the exact number of students that we would, if assuming we use the trail and outlet
We're
sites.
doing much more than the 16, 13, we're almost close to 13, 12.
Well, 1,300, so
Yeah.
across the two.
We'd have to bridge Sheridan, something like
Right,
that.
so, right. So the question is, like, if we did that work for Model 16, we would then probably already have most of the same administration ready if we wanted to have Elm Place as a standard.
Are you assuming that Indian Trail remains an elementary school and you
Yes,
keep Elm
yes.
Place? Okay, so there's traffic considerations there?
Yes, we are.
Traffic and parking considerations.
Indian Trail is not there under 16.
So, Alex, you look to answer the question, why close Elm Place versus North?
Why close Elm Place?
Because we've done a bit of that work, and I mean, maybe one of the things that this group should do is they should have that as a question that's answered in a paragraph or two of the various factors that play. I know we've done that someplace, but maybe we can more
we
explicitly
talked
do
about
that.
it. One of the things that we looked at kind of repeatedly is the similar challenges between the Wayne Thomas and Northwood site and the Indian Trail and Elm Place site. That to have both a full capacity elementary school and a full capacity middle school at either one of those sites presents serious space challenges with the play space, the parking, traffic, everything. So
And yet we're pursuing plans to have a full capacity elementary school, middle school at Wayne Thomas Northwood site. And
we
we're
are
not
because there were people who felt strongly about them, and we put them through the evaluation criteria, and as a group decided to do that. But to just sort of throw in an extra one at this point without showing where the other sections would be and how the rest of it would work isn't equal to the process that we've done on the other ones. But it would still have the same challenges in that you'd have a shared play space where we know at Wayne Thomas Northwood, it's the Northwood kids that are on the asphalt, and the Indian Trail Elm Play site, it's the Indian Trail kids that are on the asphalt. There's not enough play space to sustain both those buildings. And, we kind of keep going around it and around it and around it, but we've talked to the cabinet, we've talked to John, we've talked to, the sources that give us that information. So I don't know. I mean, we have a 5 through 8 concept that includes Indian Trail Elm Place. We have, Darren's that we've talked about. We don't have one that's just 6 through 8 at Elm Place, but that's because they don't have the flexibility on the site to build that out, to have their own field space, to have their own parking.
You could definitely build it, but it wouldn't address, you could build it, there's no question you could build it, and you could park it, you can build it, but you won't have an equivalent. They wrote it, I read an article about the ring road at Edgewood. It's great, they're gonna be able to save the second soccer field, okay? The second soccer field at Edgewood. Now what are you talking about at Elm Place? So it's not a question of whether you can house them, and by the way, at 73, I am sure there were even a fraction, there were only a fraction of the cars, drivers, the whole thing about kids just taking off.
Well, an ADA wasn't passed until 1990, so I'm a little reticent to look at numbers from the early 70s.
Well, that's all I'm trying to say. But I am saying, of course, Alex, it could be built.
Yeah.
It could be built, but you could never address, send all the kids who are good at theater there and send all the kids who are good at sports there. You don't have an equal campus.
Just on the point on 16 with the big 1 6 through 8 building, you'd have to for all your activities basically send them to field someplace else, right? You wouldn't have a field space to accommodate. So
that's a good question. You just don't know because there's some
I don't know about that.
creative things they can do with bridging the two sites. Not literally, but
John, can this be folded into the inquiry that you're going to pursue with Don?
Yeah, I wrote a note here just to ask the question, see how close we did. Ken, I just tried, we did something similar to this, I don't know how close, back in CFAC, I want to say. So we'll see what I can dig up here. I'll take up too much of Nao's time.
Okay.
Right, maybe it's efficient use.
Is this another one of those questions that we can revisit after we see the first round of numbers, or is that?
I think we should, because last week Don gave
again, voiced his residents, or I don't know, his hesitancy to having having an expanded Northwood and an existing Wayne Thomas Elementary School. I mean, this is not the first time, it's not the second time, it's not even the third time that we've heard that.
And I think we're gonna confront the same challenges anywhere that we have adjacent sites.
That's why I think we need to wait on this, Alex, because I would like to see what they come back with for the Northwood Wayne Thomas. Because if it's again, this really strongly suggesting don't do this, if you really want a good product, I think you're gonna get that same answer with your Elm Place Indian Trail.
Just consider that site's, I think, about 4 acres larger than Indian Trail, Elm Place.
Right.
5.
So I understand where you're coming from, and you want to have a fair comparison, but I think we are going to get an answer from the Northwood Wayne Thomas analysis that we can then extrapolate onto the Elm Place Indian Trail one with pretty high certainty that that's true.
And I think we really need to bring in the ravine again is sitting there, so it's not like you don't necessarily have the same ability to build in Elm Place because of the ravine.
No, you definitely don't have the.
What I'm saying is Elm Place is a substantially larger building than Northwood is today, right? And so- Sorry? The Elm Place is a substantially larger building than Northwood is today. And so theoretically, you would have to do less to expand the footprint than you would in Northwood. All I'm saying is I would like to just kind of see what this would look like so if we get to the point you mentioned where we've heard the concerns from the architects about Wayne Thomas, that we have something else to look at. But I'm okay with waiting till, with just, as long as we're thinking about that as a potential thing, I'm okay with waiting on it. I just wanted to raise the issue.
I'd love to get to sort of a more like philosophical barometer with Don in terms of like, I mean, he knows these sites better than anyone except for you.
No, it's always coming into just to start, you had X number of bodies there, you put X times 2 there tomorrow, and teachers and staff.
And field space and parking and everything else.
And Northwood, well, it's not as big as Northwood, it's not stacked, so its fault is it's a flat building, which takes up a large amount of it. It's just not a great structure to try to stack or do without taking out sections. So. But we'll have the conversation, we'll see what we can come back with short term.
Does that work?
Yep.
Awesome. Can we, in the absence of any other questions about the variations, are we good?
Is that required a vote? So ask me a question, because you voted on anything else.
Sure. Shall we vote to revisit this after the 15th? Can I get a motion?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
All those in favor? Reevaluating Elm Place as a middle school.
What's in favor is to.
As a middle school, right? Just
As the second middle school.
As the second one, yeah, as the second one.
So are we voting to consider this or to wait? What's the question?
The motion was to
Well, tell us the motion, make a motion.
Make the motion again.
State it the way you want to state it, Alex.
Well, I guess, I thought we were gonna wait, was the consensus that I heard from everybody else that was that.
But we need to vote on it to decide that. So-
No, if he doesn't want to make a motion, we don't have to vote.
Then we don't have to
Let's move
vote.
on.
That's true.
Alrighty.
Motion to move on.
Motion to move on.
Move on.
All right, so, the newly minted item 6.2, community engagement planning.
All right, so just as a review of the dates that are coming up, we're gonna have a community mailer that hits homes on May 22nd. We formed a team to work on this mailer. We had a call on Friday. But basically what we decided last week at last week's meeting is this mailer wouldn't be here are 8 configuration options. What we're going to be doing is sort of is a roadmap to where we've been, where we're at, and where we're going. That's a piece of it. That's a piece of it. Another piece of it is telling the story of how you got to 24 configurations down to a subset of that, and then eventually 3 that will be recommended, 2 or 3 that will be recommended to the Board of Education. It'll be a call to action to come to the forum. We'll be teasing it throughout.
We'll have a glossary of terms, of like educational terms that people have said that they don't understand. And then we'll have like a section that says, what have we learned from you? So really calling out in a graphic way the survey and some of the things 2.0 has learned along the way, kind of piggybacking on the State of the District mailer about the fact patterns that we're trying to establish. So that's really the forum, or the mailer. So that should hit homes May 22nd is our target date. Community forum, it's going to be on June 7th and 8th at 7 p.m. at Highland Park High School. So we'll have the forums those 2 days. We're not going to be doing a survey before the 2.0 recommendation, so we're going to increase the amount of focus groups we're doing. So right now we're targeting 3 dates for the focus groups for June 21st, 2nd, and 23rd. So those are the focus groups. 2.0 to make the recommendation in July, whether that be a special board meeting or the July board meeting. There's no board meeting on the 4th, so it'll probably be soon thereafter, maybe the 18th. And then perhaps the board doing a community survey in July or thereafter, and then doing a public version of that survey in August. So those are the big milestones for community engagement. As far as right now, what we need to do is essentially I created a worksheet for people to fill out to come up with that data, a collection of data that can send the link and have link turn it into a narrative that will become the next mailer. So that due date is on Wednesday at 11 a.m. to have that initial data. So that was, passed off this weekend. So
that was the email where you asked people to comment on the, no.
Nope. So this was a subset of 2.0 members. That email was collecting issues for our next step, which is the focus groups and the community forums. So those are issues to test. If you have issues that are not in that Google Doc or you need me to resend that, let me know, and I'll put those in there. Keep collecting that. Lori?
Yeah, because I wasn't around last time we did the focus groups, how do you get the members for the focus groups?
You stand outside of Once Upon a Bagel and hope someone says, stand outside of Once Upon a Bagel and hope someone says yes.
And he's not
Don't go there, they're not from Highland Park, they're from everywhere, they're coming from Sunset.
So that was my question, actually. How are we confident that through the community forums and the focus groups that we'll have sort of representative enough feedback to be able to make a strong recommendation?
So it's qualitative, it's not quantitative. So even if everyone that came to the forum were representing, individual subsections of the population, it's a focus group. So you're really testing qualitative data. You're not going to get what you got out of the survey that says 30% of the community thinks that. What you're going to be able to do is test perhaps a mom that has a child at this school believes that consistency means this to her. A teacher.
But it seems like we have placed sort of the most confidence in the survey results. So I'm just worried that we're not going to have that as we're kind of getting over the finish line.
Yeah, but you still have to you have the initial survey results. And that's what was discussed last week with Jeff being here. And that's what we decided to go with last week. If we want to vote and do something else.
Well, I think Megan's point, and if I understand you correctly, and I share this, is when we originally started talking about focus groups back in August or September before we sort of got blocked the first time. There was an ambitious plan to really recruit a broad diversity of folks over a period of many weeks to get a focus group that would be qualitatively useful and methodologically significant. In our last attempt at the focus groups, which you may remember was a little rushed, we were like standing outside with postcards begging people. And since we have a little bit more time, right, between now and the focus group, could we convene Link to do recruitment for those groups, perhaps in a way that doesn't put that burden upon us standing outside, or is going to attract a group that we can have full confidence in that is going to be representative? Because I think Megan's point is that without the survey, we are going to want to hear what these focus groups are saying, and since that's going to come so quickly before we make a recommendation, it is bound to have sort of outsized influence in the final weeks.
When you do normally if you hire a firm to do focus groups professionally, you'll often write basically a survey, like a very short one with a series of screener questions, and then they'll call a random sample of people almost weekly for surveys and try and recruit people to come in. So it's not, it's a very, very randomized selection. So even if you only have 12 people in a room, they're not, a statistically significant sample or anything. It's still people you've got, you're reaching out to them as opposed to them kind of computer.
Yes.
So if we were to do something like that, I definitely think that we do that.
So that's what we did the last time for parents, right? So we had all the phone numbers for, our school district, and they called through those numbers. They didn't get too terribly, they weren't very successful doing the cold
Which is
call.
shocking, isn't it?
It's a bit shocking, but again, when we talk about, last time.
It's illuminating.
When you say it's not successful, I mean, it's not uncommon to call 25 people to get one.
Right. And it's early in the process. It was a primary. If we're looking at it as like an election analogy. So it's game time now. We have configuration options that we want to test. So there's a potential where, we can be more successful. The problem there is, where do we get the data list to call through? We went back and forth the last time around of how we were going to staff these focus groups. Was it going to be an open call, an open kind of broadcast and then screen? Or was it going after groups that had contacts that we would then try to cold call? There's that question. One of the things that needs to happen again is forming a group, and we're actually reconvening a group that we already formed that you're on, and answering these questions.
And actually, this came up at our exec meeting this evening in the context of the community forums. It's sort of jumping ahead to the transition, but I know that a couple of our board elects, we're going to see it tomorrow night, were involved in the focus groups last time around. And so my question to you all and anyone else who participated in the preparation, but also the execution of the focus groups, is what did you learn that worked really well last time, and what would you do differently this time around to get more meaningful feedback, the most meaningful feedback? Because, I think even just by comparison with the forums, we did things a little differently both nights, and so it was really meaningful to go back and say, what worked better? So the question is, what worked in the focus groups, and what can we build on, and what didn't work? It sounds like there's concerns about recruitment. How can we do better there, but also in terms of the work that took place within the formal focus groups? How can we get more out of this?
Well, would it be all right if we just lingered for a moment on recruitment? Because I think your questions are important, but I have a feeling once we start diving into that, we may get away from the recruitment part a little bit. I just want to respond briefly to what I heard Nicholas say, which is one of the challenges of how do you find out who you're calling, right? Or how do you do a list for that? And so my question, without an agenda, is what is the Link's recommendation, or have we started that process with them now about how they think is the most effective way to get members in? And I don't know if we've had that conversation.
So we've done this. So the last time we did this, our initial tack was to contact smaller groups.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be the senior center, and ask if they could send an email to their members and have them contact us, and we get contacts that way. I don't know if we can use voter rolls. I don't know if those have phone numbers that we can use. The way that we tried to staff on the parent side again was to turn over those lists, because we had those lists. At some point, we kind of shifted and just made it open to anyone.
Right.
They did screen, so we broadcasted it out there,
Sure,
and then they screened and maybe turned away 40 people to come out with the two focus groups.
Well, for instance, during the first attempt, the pre-attempt, we were going to convene a group of kind of VIP decision makers. And if you remember, some helpful person from the library showed up not knowing it was canceled. Do we feel like that is a direction to go again, or are the groups to be convened wholly of community members who are not affiliated with any particular position of authority?
I feel like if you focus on those VIP type people, you're not going to get a representative sample.
I think you're right about that. Right. So to go back to what you're suggesting, would Link still say today, if we said, hey, how do we do this? We've got 5 weeks, they would say, write the senior center, write these people, and do we know who they would suggest we contact? And should we begin doing that now?
So we did talk about this a couple calls ago with Link, and my question to them was, do we broadcast this out, or do we use the database that 2.0 is kind of already created through all of our engagement?
You did it that way. You did put an ad in the paper, didn't you, for the focus?
For the last focus group. That was after we made the decision to open it up.
Right.
So their recommendation this time was, again, to open it up and kind of broadcast it, because it was, on this call, they said it was a way to kind of engage the community with this process.
Can I make a recommendation? Maybe reach out to the League of Women Voters, since they did a really good job kind of recruiting and getting people engaged in the election process. They might have some good resources in getting people engaged and participating in this focus group as well. And they target a demographic that we tend to have a difficult time engaging in our community.
It's a really good
representation.
I'm thinking Park District. We've got lots of different programs for lots of different ages. Like when you're getting parents that are already in school. And when you go into a Park District program, you can get, the preschool parents that are coming in. There's senior water aerobics. I mean, there's all sorts of things that you can get through the park districts, and all of those are, paying people with phone numbers. And they also have a program with the SMILE program, where they have people, low income people, so it's not just people with money, but it's people that are involved in using our community. So it's sort of an more involved group.
What do you envision that looking like? Because I think last time around we put postcards out and posters at park district sites. The league has lists, and I think they did a lot more, they took more of an active role. So what do you think that would look like with the park district?
I think you've got your list of phone numbers. Ask if you can get lists of phone numbers, or put your information, because now people are really wanting to have their voice heard a little bit more, because they felt bit by the referendum that was put up before, that they didn't have any say. So I think those people that want to have a voice, might respond. They're coming in and, they're coming in to have their kid registered at the ice show, so have something there. They're coming in to register for camps at Westridge, have something there. They're coming in to swim or to get golfing.
Sure, and we did that last time.
Right,
We did all
there's
that.
no
Okay,
difference about you have to get by the referendum process before. That has changed. The only thing that's different now is we're further along in our process. So people will be more, my theory is people are going to be more interested once we start talking about configurations. That a lot of the struggles we had, 2 months ago? It was pre-election, people were really focused on that. The league got a lot of people out because it was an election, so that makes a lot of sense. If we start talking about configurations and there's press, there's Tribune picks things up, and we start talking about things in the board meetings, you're gonna have the community engaged again, and people will want to come to these things.
That's what
versus
The park
pulling them
district
from.
does a weekly or monthly park line
We did that a week or something before.
That if
We
they're
were on
willing.
very short notice.
No, of course. Yeah.
We were on super short notice. We were asking people for 4 days later or 5 days later.
Nothing to show at that point. Now, in theory, we have something that we can start testing or talking about, or we're also getting closer to the referendum date and the board date and all the things. People will be more active. 3 months ago or 2 months ago, it was kind of a good task, but no one was really engaged at all.
So,
Right, so these are great.
Please.
No. So I think these are great avenues to promote these events and get as many people as possible to engage. Come to them or sign up for them and hit the screen. So that's our direction, right? This is an open call to, kind of apply, for lack of a better term, for a focus group.
And Link should select who's in.
Yeah. That's how it worked last time, that's.
Extreme vetting.
And what I was just going to suggest by way of homework for everyone is if you have some brainwave with regards to channels that we have not yet considered pursuing, email Nicholas.
Please do. Formulating plans and budgets right now, so it's important to have that information up front.
We're also gonna put it in the mailing, right?
Yeah.
Yes. All right, are we good with community engagement? Is there anything else you want to
Does
say?
anyone have any questions?
Yeah, what's the date of the community sessions again?
7 and 8. 7 and 8 of June.
7 and 8.
That's the last day of school.
It's the 9. And we talked about that at the exec meeting, so what we landed on was for parents of children currently enrolled in 112 as a courtesy, because those of you who have or have had school-aged kids, you know that the last couple of weeks and months of the school year are bananas. We're going to get save the dates out, not just through the district email, a standalone in addition to the 112 second, thank you. And we're gonna have the PTO president send out blasts. We're going to get it on people. So look, people are gonna miss it, but there'll be no shortage of over communicating.
When we do that thing where you put it in their backpack, like it worked last time.
Yeah, that was I thought that was great.
And I will share that even though 200 people showed up, our website stats quadrupled. So just so you know that engagement doesn't always mean boots on the ground, although the process requires that. We want to get as many people out to these events as possible. We are engaging thousands of people even if they don't show up.
That's true.
I thought you were on the verge. Sorry, no pressure.
Is that the 800 for the survey, or is that just for looking on the website, or what was that?
I can show you.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. Item 6.3, 2.0, board transition planning. So this is our last night with Art and Alex. Dan resigned, but he's hanging out. But he still shows up. And he's hanging out, and we got him here. So the question is. Adam, I know. Adam's been hanging. The question is, you know, as this group of heavy lifters moves to another side of the table, is there any work that they did? Do we feel like the knowledge transfer is complete with regards to the work on community engagement, with regards to the work on finance? Are there any big gaps that we need to make sure to cover?
Well, for one, we're not moving away. Yeah, we're a phone call away. We'll probably be coming to many, if not all of these meetings. So we're not going to disengage.
Can we take all
We've got a
three
vested
and do
interest in this group's success, so we'll still be there.
I think we shouldn't be decision makers. We should
Probably not.
influence the decisions of the group. I mean, although obviously when you ask us our input, we give you your input, but we should be here to help you and just you know, be servants. That's how I would envision our role.
And if there is anything that comes up with the process that, you know, the question is, well, hey, Alex was involved the last time, how did you know what I mean? Like, call me, you know what I mean? It's not, I'm not, you know, I don't have to be actively involved in something to still be helpful to people.
So I think part of it, we're gonna, and it's changed so many times in the course of us doing this work, right? But there were certain expectations in terms of like the channels through which we were to communicate with board members, and I think part of putting this on the agenda is we want to be mindful of that and respectful, and also like, while some of you are, you know, very comfortable with us picking up the phone, like we just want to make sure to respect boundaries and honor all of that.
Well, I think, you know, candidly, I think one of the real challenges for this whole committee early on was we communicated with the board in these sort of high stakes meetings where a few people came in and talked. It was the first time the board had heard about what had been discussed for a few weeks, and then people were kind of taken off guard. I mean, you know, the fact that we have moved away from that, and the fact that, you know, the four of us who have been on the committee are now going to be on the board and are still, you know, as Adam is, Dan are still coming to these meetings, like, this is a much better environment for talking about stuff and hearing input from people than than that was. So I think, like, we don't need to, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't, the danger is we need to make sure to continue to involve everybody on the board and not just the board.
That's well said.
Yeah.
Well, so there's another danger that we identified a little bit last time, and I think we should just sort of maybe touch on for a moment, which is what happens after 2.0 makes its recommendations to the board in July? And we talked.
So that was the way that, there were a couple of ways to interpret this agenda item.
That's how I interpret it.
And I know, and my suggestion, if I may, is that an existential freak out at this juncture would be premature. Because from week to week, the work changes and our insights change. And I think it makes a lot of sense to let the board become the board. And kind of, we've got time, not a ton.
Well, so I agree with you, and I wouldn't have an existential freak out anyway, but I would suggest that we come to any decisions tonight. I simply want to keep the issue on the radar and not have it be a thing we talk about 2 days before we make the recommendations. I think it needs to be done among the group and then with the board, perhaps in a workshop format, before leading up to that.
That's kind of what we talked about, was discussing it with the board.
I don't know either, what are we talking about?
Oh, sorry. So this came up last time because one of the issues was we decided to postpone a survey perhaps until August. So that raised the question of, if there's a survey after 2.0, is there still a 2.0? And who's analyzing that survey? And who's writing that survey? And to what extent does that survey inflect the decision making? And what are the mechanisms available to the board to take our recommendations and turn them into a course of action? And I think maybe even somebody was saying, I didn't sign up to do work beyond this particular moment, and there could be sort of a squishy explosion of boundaries. And I think given the challenges that happened in the last referendum process after CFAC presented its report, when a different group was convened to analyze that report, it didn't, for some people in the community, feel inclusive, and the recommendation changed, ... We need to work all that stuff out.
Well, I think your point of we need to work it out is the absolute reason why we shouldn't be working it out. It's important.
Well, and this was the question: is this the best time for that discussion, or is it next week with Eric and
Oh, that's what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. I don't want to discuss it now. I want to discuss the group.
Putting it on the agenda now.
Yes.
I also think that the one thing that we've learned through all of this is we're often wrong when we think we know how things are going to shake out. Dynamics get established and then they shift. The players change, the stakes change, and so, I think having the full board with us is important, but also just knowing that it will probably change.
Sure.
And we'll have to be responsive.
Right. I still think we need the plan.
And just from an operational perspective, just offer up that we don't have enough data yet to know when does 2.0 need to end. The data may come back from the community, it may come back from the financial side and say, you know what, we need to do something different. Because it's just going off down this rate we never predicted, so.
But James is right, it's key to keep in mind.
Oh, no, I'm not saying it's not.
That
It's just-
transition will be key on a lot of levels.
Oh, most definitely. I'm just cautioning that operationally,
Supports it,
time is gonna probably dictate when that becomes a little more.
but it is a little premature.
I think Dave's just point, and I think that's been raised, that if people from this committee are going to continue to be involved in the process after a report is delivered, then that needs to be formalized somehow. Not just kind of happen, which we happened last time.
And it's not up to us.
Right.
Right, but we can make recommendations. We are in a position where we can say.
We need to have this discussion and have it at these meetings, and you guys can make a recommendation, and we can agree with it or not, or discuss it. It just needs to be talked about and not just kind of happen.
I actually think we are well positioned to say, hey board, here's some recommendations for plans, and here's some ways we might wish to be involved if you wish to have us involved in the future. Work all that.
So we, at the executive meeting, decided to fold item 6.4 into 6.3. because this was something that came up at the end, and so centralizing finance knowledge. I think, again, you know, there's this question of, does everyone on 2.0, is the status of knowledge where it needs to be? Is it current? But I think that this was in part too, trying to respond to a sense of urgency of knowing where we are with models and with finances. And I think we have an understanding of the model and we have an understanding of the variables, but I don't think that we can get numbers before we get numbers.
Well, was our understanding, the correct understanding of the question, after seeing this, was this something talked about last week as a?
This is in response to Raf's comment that, you know, we really wanted to have a sense of how sustainable various models, and Julie also made the same comment. And so we got together with Monica and Chris, a couple of us, Mark and Brian Sefton, and talked about this. And I think what we came out with was the idea was we could probably give you some general ranges. Like, you know, as you get farther along here, you build, you know, it's sort of, you build these edifices of assumptions, and as I think I mentioned at the last meeting, you know, when you're really thinking about the savings from closing an elementary school, and this was a point that Monica Schrader reiterated, you know, you have to look at, you know, boundary changes. You know, the BDR3, 2.7 million closing the first elementary school assumption was predicated on, you know, even class sizes throughout the district, which would mean, you know, splitting neighborhoods and things. It also was predicated on the BDR3 class size guidelines, which is not where we are right now, even with the recent bump up in guidelines. So then you have to ask, you know, you don't know what those are until you actually go through them. So is it likely we're going to get 2.7 million in savings from the first elementary school? In my opinion, that's not likely, but that requires a bunch of work, and we can't figure out, you know, is it 2 million? Is it $1.5 million? We can't do that right now. The other thing we heard from Monica was, and this was, you know, very important in all these configurations, was that, you know, until you do a staffing model, a proper staffing model, you just don't know. You don't have that much confidence. And what she said to us is that she could do, you know, it would be feasible to do 2 or possibly 3, but she can't do 8. So again, we don't know. The other thing is we haven't asked you, John, to update things like, okay, where we are in our capital spending, where, you know, what HLS have we gotten to, what haven't we gotten to. You know, what we need to do is we need to put together, you know, when we have the options, we need to put together a longer-term capital plan. What's going to be covered by a referendum, what's not, how does that all play? When we get all that information, we can come up with something that's a little, you know, that we have a little more confidence in. I think that what we've done here sort of can give you a ballpark, and it's not much different than what we've said before. You know, fewer buildings are more financially sustainable. You know, one thing Mark and I were talking about, Mark, you feel free to pitch in today about this, was, you know, 4 building models, you probably pop fewer sections, and so there's a savings there. How do you capture that in the financial model? That's very hard to do.
Say that again, Dan.
4 section buildings or 4 building models?
No, 4 building models too, but 4 section buildings, right? When you have, you reduce the, you know, then we got to do a discussion. Well, if you have the regional grade centers, are you really going to, you know, is that going to be materially different than having, you know, 5 elementary schools? And then we decided, well, no, because each of the, you know, 2 sets of those are really, you know, you have the monolingual dual in it, and you're not going to combine, you know, you don't have 8 sections in the building, you really have 4. So, but it's those sorts of considerations that we need to look more at. So we do need to come up with an integrated model, right? So when we have, just to figure out what, you know, what, if anything, the district should be putting toward it, and that's something that has to be worked on. And then, of course, when a plan comes, then you have to go through year by year, figuring out how do you stage it and what are the you know, the implications there. So, you know, here just to tell you what I did in the sheet, I passed out, you know, model 4, you know, build a new elementary school, build a new middle school. You know, one of the things we have to come up with and think about, you know, what are the, once you've built those, what are the ongoing capital and health, life, safety? And so we made an assumption. We made an assumption that, you know, you would, is it realistic or not? Probably in the early years you spend next to nothing on 2 new buildings, but we assumed you'd spend about, you know, $1 a square foot for just scheduled, for at least, you know, for the initial years, and you would have, we have this break fix assumption, if you remember, it was $1.77. So you know, for 2 new buildings, we just came up with a number, $600,000 a year you would spend. Is that realistic? Probably not. But again, those are the types of things you can fill in more as you go along farther. But we did incorporate the thing, which I think is good, and you'll see the second thing, the referendum covering some of the life cycle. One of the things that came out on the 13th was the report from Gilbane saying that, you know, basically if you're going to put air conditioning in this, I understood this, I wasn't at the meeting, but you know, you're going to replace the heating as well, and that's part of what the green expenditures are. So if you in a referendum are going to cover those costs and you're going to reduce the green expenses on, you know, our operating, that obviously, as you can see underneath the, you know, halfway down the page, that makes all these models much more sustainable.
As you know, I had some concerns with the model at the beginning of this process, and basically that went away when it was explained that the purpose of the model was to allow this group to compare different scenarios. And yes, absolutely, that's great use of this model. My concern is as we begin to make this much more public and we start to take this to the community, that we really need to build a several paragraph description of disclaimers. You just talked about a couple of them, but stuff like, you know, state aid never going down ever. We never get hit with any pension costs. There's never a tax freeze. I mean, those kinds of things are tens of millions of dollars.
I don't think we should give a number as this is sustainable to this year, because inevitably that was what happened in the last referendum. That's inevitably going to be wrong. But I think giving a range to people. But you're right. I agree with all those caveats. But I think we need to give a range, and we haven't figured out how to do that.
Right. But even just a list, sort of a disclaimer paragraph.
You're right.
Saying these things are going to, you know, could very well impact the model,
right?
And therefore could affect these numbers.
Right.
I'm not talking about changing all the numbers.
No, you're right. I don't disagree with you, Rick. And I'm just trying to make the additional point that, again, you know, I put dates here, but really we should say, okay, let's say like model number 24. Okay, that's sort of an outlier. That's 2026. Maybe we say that's a you know, I don't know, I use the word less sustainable, or that's a 5 to 10 year sustainability based on our model. You know, other you know, we come up with ranges to people.
Yeah. I just like ranges.
So how did you get the current model one, this number?
Basically, that's so all these models assume you've got full day kindergarten, 19 sections, and full day kindergarten in 19 sections, and
class size.
Right, class. Well,
19 sections.
Yeah, 19 sections per grade. Versus when we did the model that we shared with the public, I think the deficit was 92 million, but we didn't offer full day kindergarten in that one.
And when were you starting the full day kindergarten?
Pardon me?
This
just assumed 29. So is that, you know, hopefully that's realistic. I mean, I also assume that the 2 new buildings were built in 2019. Is that realistic? No, but just for purposes of the model, that's how it was constructed.
But the nun version had it starting in 2019.
The what? The nun. Oh, the nun.
Current model, nun.
Right, the nun. The balance, that basically the balance goes under in 2019. It goes under 25% if everything
No, but
is.
the kindergarten started the same year. That was all I was asking.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So the current model includes full day kindergarten, is that what I'm gathering here?
Yes.
It's a current model with.
Yes, with full day kindergarten included, that's right.
But not until 2019.
Let me see, let me check the 2019, I think that's right.
How does it accommodate for full day kids?
If we have a more successful referendum, it could show it starting in 20.
Boundary changes?
So, no, I'm sorry, physical.
No, I know.
More successful referendum.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah, the model doesn't incorporate any costs.
I think I have it 2018 actually, full day kindergarten, but it's only $1.2 million, so it's not
On any of
material.
these.
Is Mark
Paul's
gonna
never started.
are you gonna own the work for this moving forward?
Well, I'm not sure that anyone necessarily has to own it. I mean, Dan and I have been working pretty closely the whole time. I don't think.
Dan, you going anywhere?
I'm not going anywhere.
But for purposes of this committee, I'm happy to do that. But I don't, in a practical working sense, I don't think I will.
We have, and Brian said.
For those of us who aren't gonna touch the model, it's helpful to know.
Well, let me just say one thing, is that for those of you who are not numbers people, I think we need to guide expectations as to how much the finance committee can ultimately contribute to this. For those of you who are waiting for us to sort of descend and tell you, well, this is the one, go in that direction, I think you'll be disappointed. I mean, I don't think there are material differences. There are certain assumptions that sort of limit how much difference there is in the models. You know, dual language, 7 sections, 2 different schools. That sort of, everything else sort of falls in. There really aren't that many toggles, to be honest. Class size, the most important one I can think of is actually frequency of boundary changes and, you know, how you want to run the district in an ongoing fashion. Although, you know, the buildings do make it, obviously fewer is better than more, but I don't think it's going to.
It's also about it's also about trade-offs. Like if you look at model number 4, that's the one with the new buildings, and we're showing that that's the most sustainable model. Well, yeah, if you put in, you know, 150 or 200 $1 million, you know, you're putting a lot of money in to get the sustainability, and you have to evaluate, does that trade-off make sense?
This also is not assuming, this is assuming that you're not charging any tuition for full-day kindergarten.
Right, that's right. And you know, the full-day kindergarten, there are a lot of assumptions there. It's probably not $1.2 million. It's probably, Adam can speak to this better, it's probably a lower number, but again, that's the number that's been generated for us that came up when this analysis was done about 1.5 years or 2 years ago that we've been using.
How much else?
I have a question for Nicholas.
Yes.
We were talking about how the recruitment for focus groups went last time. We were in a little bit of a time crunch. I personally, you know, saw a lot of people like go to a stress mode when you talked about who you were and why you were standing there. Even though 2.0 was successful, this on the street thing is a little too, or at that time was a little too intense for them. There were people who say, well, I haven't decided how I'm voting yet. I mean, it created, I don't have children in the schools, it just created a lot of stress. The postcards distributed. So I have 2 questions. Was anybody ever able to track the people you did receive as positive, where they came from? Did anybody come from posters? Did anybody come from the Park District?
Yes.
So you know how your resources work. We don't know that. Even when they attended you and they were called, no one asked them how.
It wasn't one of the screening questions. We know
It should be.
We know the people that Link contacted. So Link called certain people from lists that they had, and so those people who they called, we know that they were called by Link. But in which list they came from. But of the people that called Link that phone number and left a message saying, I'd like to participate in the focus group, we don't know where they came from. And I would
it be valuable to know as they're screened, so you know,
absolutely,
even as you go forward and you talk about 2.0 participating in some sort of advocacy for a referendum, if we do go that far and if we do want to advocate, I just think that's kind of important to know.
It's absolutely. I mean, that's the biggest takeaway and teachable moment I have out of the forums, is I should have done that.
Okay, well,
so.
Okay, and then I have.
We'll make sure we do it this time.
And then I have one other thing. So you were saying it's all valuable, it's raising consciousness when the issue comes in front of people, they're not gonna go like, whoa, where did that come from? And I never had a chance and nobody told me, you know, this was gonna be this month. Why not after a meeting like tonight, or Tuesday, or I don't know what our next meeting is, that we issue a press release with a little summary just, and then like press release, 2.0 continues to work. There are going to be postcards that are going to show the path forward. I don't know, whatever we, not plan. And that there will be community forums June 6th and June 7th. Or 7th and 8th. Or whatever you think it should be. But just that constant awareness, never, just, it's coming. There's no question we want you involved. There's no question we're looking for community input. And it might even make it easier to get people when that comes. And even if it doesn't, it will smooth things, it smooths it over. If you can find something newsworthy, obviously you call your people, they need something newsworthy, and maybe it is newsworthy. I think people want to know what 2.0 is doing.
Yeah, we're good. I want to make.
Hang on, Art.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Art, and then Rick.
So I wanted to go back to the financial knowledge. So we talked about one piece of it, which was the sustainability piece. The other piece of it is the construction cost piece. And I think what this group needs to do is to replicate kind of the spreadsheet that Adam put together and begin to refine that spreadsheet over time as we get these numbers back from Gilbane, start to plug them in and get them, refine them. So right now we can start with, broad estimates, which of course we know are going to be wrong, but have some use for planning purposes to compare one configuration against another. And there'll be some margin of error, we know that. But then as we get the numbers from Gilbane, we continue to refine those numbers and plug in the real numbers that we get back. What that will do is serve a few different purposes. One is we'll be able to look at scope issues. So we'll know if this model is $190 million, and therefore it's probably out of the question, but are there ways to reuse a building that we didn't otherwise think about? For example, like in the Northwood, where we have Northwood and Wayne Thomas, and maybe you could put 6th grade at Wayne Thomas or something.
How you can refine this.
Right, it's different. There's a million ways you could just refine each one of these models to begin to redefine scope, to get those numbers lower or whatever. So I think someone from finance needs to pick that part up. I know Brian Septon's not here, and he would be the person I would think that would be the natural person to do it. And I don't want to volunteer Brian without him in the room.
So moved.
That's how it happens. That's when you don't come.
But I'm strongly urging this finance group to do something of that sort so we can begin to have those conversations.
Is that a finance thing?
That was my question.
construction,
That was
municipal.
exactly my question, Julie.
You meant the
I feel like
construction.
the refining piece and the variations on a given configuration, I feel like that should be happening. But my question is, how could we as well-informed lay people do this in a way that's credible next to the one from Gilbane?
Don said how to do it.
Is it
Don
something
asked
that
for a
you would be
group
able to do,
last week.
John? I mean, like.
No, well, our first pass will be to define our controllables, if you will. But if you're gonna change and not do ADA at Ravinia hypothetically, you're gonna take that big chunk off the plate because that kind of scope design, that's this room. Us making sure we got the right bathrooms, getting the ADA in the way that they should, and stairwells and dealing with the facilities, that I feel comfortable because we went through that the last time. We can kind of get that meshed out, get them melted out to be a little more pared down and equal. But you want to change functional parts of the configuration, that's got to come back to this room.
But Don mentioned that at the meeting last week, that he was asking for a subcommittee. He was anticipating refinements, wasn't he? Thinking that we would
Well,
make
that may
changes.
depend where the numbers come.
Right.
But I think that's to the process that David was talking about before, what our tool is going to do down the road. Once we get a good picture of where these are, what are we having to cut ADA out of a school? Are we having to make those kind of drastic hits to places? Then you're going to want to have a subcommittee to be on that and help work through some of that detail and not try to do the whole group every time, every idea.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question along those lines. The criteria that Nagel, Hartray, and Gilbane is being given to come up with these costs. Like, for example, I recall looking at existing elementary school plans that had some classrooms that were a little undersized compared to new standards. Are they going to live with those classrooms, or are they planning on gutting those and?
No, the places we're making physical changes to the building is predominantly where you have additions.
So in other words, the approach similar to what we saw at Highland Park High School, where the classrooms were essentially, the partition stayed in place, and the work was done within the boundaries of the existing.
Yeah, the goal is to keep the shell unless there's a room or something that has to be possibly modified to get the fourth kindergarten or something. But for the most part, we are not redesigning the footprint.
Okay,
Unless
now,
there's an attachment.
let's say, for example, in the middle schools, I know there was a lot of talk about 21st century education, needing breakout spaces and pods and so on. Is there going to be partition changes and so on to create those?
Not wholesale. It's only going to be on a
So the idea is to keep the square footage as low as possible and to do a minimum of partition changing as possible.
Yep.
Are these costs that they're doing, are they just on the construction, or are they on the interior costs also? Because there are ways to cut down on interior
Oh, no,
costs.
it's interior finishes.
Okay, so, right, so are you talking about high end? Are you talking about middle? Are you talking about low?
We're kind of starting where we were at the last go around. We were in the middle of the road.
Okay.
Some things were a little bit lower in the middle, but we're not going for gold toilets and
It's not
gold
Gucci.
leafing. Yeah, it's not Gucci.
You're putting in fire protection, ADA,
Yeah.
and we need the ability to take things out, like say, okay, this is the, there's elevators here that we've decided we don't.
Yeah, we're not going to put those things into this school.
Okay, but there's ability for somebody to look at that and review it and say, here's a way to conceivably.
Now, the only challenge when you start getting to some of those is you've also tied in some of the ceiling work or roof work because you've had to go through that. So you got to, it's not just an elevator plugged in with all that peripheral stuff.
Right.
You got to kind of extrapolate some of that out. So it takes a little bit of time to do those bigger items.
Okay.
So the question is this a finance question? Is there value in trying to assign a role within the committee, or do we want to broach these questions and challenges as a group and then run the numbers?
We're talking about the Gilbane numbers, it's not a finance number, it's a holistic educational impact, facilities, and the finance part plays a role in it, just to determine what can be shifted from capital costs to other, that's where that comes into play.
And values.
Right.
Back to values.
So what we need to get is from Nagel and Gilbane is, here's what it is, and then we need to have committees look at each model and challenge concepts like, do we need a new building, do we reuse the building, or because the cost to rehab this building is so expensive that a partial reconstruction makes sense. I'm just hypothetical. That's what we need to do, not necessarily decide, where the elevator should be and what walls should be removed. It's more, from a higher level, dig deep into these different models and determine if there's any changes that we can see based on the configurations or the parameters we gave them that could improve.
So, Jerry, the reason I'm bringing this up is that you're exactly right. We need to do those things for each of these configurations. We don't have a lot of time to do all that, and so we should start that as quick as possible. And by having a rough draft of this model, somewhere just to capture the information, to begin to have those conversations would be beneficial.
Yeah, the model itself needs data. So without the data.
Well, right now we've some high-level estimates, which we can begin to have those conversations about, and then you can refine those as we get the data.
I would just caution against only assigning one person that job. I think if you're going to have a job, you're going to create something like that, it needs to come from several people's input, because if there's one person, the perspective can be shifted.
I'm just talking about someone who's going to put the numbers on a piece of paper. I'm not talking about anyone who's making any decisions with the numbers.
No, but still the way you put.
I'm confused what you're asking, Art. Like, what should somebody be doing this? I mean, Nagel Hart should provide these numbers what should somebody?
They're gonna spread them, they're gonna have to spread them. Naval Hartree is gonna have to spread those
Yeah,
numbers, not this
so what
committee.
does the finance person have to do with the numbers, or what do they have to do?
Doesn't necessarily have to be a finance
Or what
person,
is-
but it's someone to take what Adam's done and begin to own that, and then refine that as we get numbers from Naval Hartree. So that you have something to look at for your next meeting, where you can begin to have these scope discussions that Darren's talking about.
You're gonna get that from Gilbane.
You're gonna get the
You're funding
Adam's
the line
given
items
us.
of cost.
Yeah, you're gonna get the line items of cost, you're gonna get by school, those line items, so you're gonna have much more detail than what Adam's been able to produce.
You got, I feel like no one's getting my thoughts, let me try it again. What I'm saying is, let's get that on paper now at an estimated level from the numbers that we know that we have, and not wait until we get Gilbane's numbers, which is gonna take several weeks.
I guess
I think we have to wait for.
It's a week.
Start here. I would-
It's not a week. We can get some preliminary numbers on a few configurations.
Which numbers are you asking us to use?
The ones that Adam
Those
started.
are a year and a half old.
Well, it's not a year and a half old.
Well, it'd
It's
be
based on.
pre-referendum numbers.
No. What Adam put together, and Adam can probably speak to this better than I can.
I know.
But it's based on Don McKay's work that he did in the fall, and it's based on Gilbane's numbers that they gave us 3 weeks ago.
Right, so Don's work they did in the fall was utilizing pre-referendum estimates and
It was using a square footage, it was using a cost per square foot.
He used both.
And the new drawings that he had drawn for this.
So in order to do that, we don't have the data to apply that to these models, because he didn't do it on these models.
I'm not sure what this is.
So we need to get input from them. We can't start with data that.
We do it, we have, at a high level, we have some of the numbers. We know, for example, we know how much is good, how much. Adam, can you speak to how you put it together?
Basically, we now have updated preliminary estimates on the add-on costs, right, the air conditioning. I mean, we can spitball numbers, but I think at this point, with 10 days to go, but 10 days, 12 days before they're gonna come back with their next set.
Well,
Probably
coming back with.
The 15th is when you're getting numbers.
That for what?
A full configuration vertically, Model 6, because that has some very common buildings throughout all of them. And horizontally, you're gonna have Brayside, maybe a trail as well.
Is that gonna be
You're
enough?
better off waiting 2 weeks.
Is that gonna be enough to fill in your?
You're gonna get 80% of the.
It's gonna give us, I think, a chance to start seeing trajectory. It won't give us a final point, but we'll definitely see where we're trending. But that aside, I think to what I think Darren's trying to bring up, you can get together and talk philosophically, how you value ADA versus fire, or those kind of things, where you're going to apply it to what school, that you can't. But you can talk philosophically what you, as a committee, think you value. And you can have those conversations.
And even that, I would say we can't get ahead of ourselves with regards to the next round of community engagement, because there's it's that values piece.
Well, it's value and it's the cost benefit of that value too. They all go together.
Right.
You value.
It's capital V value and lowercase v value, right?
And also, we went through a lot of these factors, and we said, well, we can't measure those, so we can't include them in our thing. Well, we have to include them at some point, and that should be when this stuff starts coming out.
Sure. We are at 9 o'clock. Is this a comfortable time?
So the numbers that you're gonna get in a couple weeks, at what level do you expect those to be to make a decision on narrowing them down? Are they gonna be plus or minus 25%?
You're not going to be narrowing configurations
I was
down
gonna
right
say,
at that.
that's not what we're using those
You won't be
for.
ready.
What are you looking at?
Well, that's a dangerous question to answer. It's not plus or minus 20%. Those are going to be numbers that I would say should not exceed numbers at this stage. They're not like they should be low or high. It's just those numbers would probably be not to exceed based on that model, the way it was designed. Now you start changing the design of it, or the options within it.
Okay, you narrowed it down to say 3 or 4 options based on the numbers that we're gonna get in a couple weeks.
So you won't be able to do that till the end of the month.
Hey, John,
And that's
it
not
might be helpful.
What's the game?
If the game plan is that the numbers come back and they inform our forum conversations, so that we have like either a range or numbers depending on how they look to go with the configurations that we talk about at the forums, which is still the wider range. And then we get that feedback from the community on those configurations and factor that into our process of narrowing things down. So we're not going to be narrowing things down just based on the numbers that come back. We're going to be talking about that and having those conversations after the forums and the
People respond
focus
to it, you want to
groups.
see people's response.
We need to get the
to
responses, we need to
configuration.
do the focus groups. It's, it's a big component of it to get that.
I'm just
that input.
concerned that you're presented to the public a certain number based on a certain degree of conceptual budgeting, and how likely are they to stay at those numbers when you go to the next step of the budget?
They, based on our last process, if they go there or down, should be the intent.
So the contingency goes down.
They go there or down? I thought in the last referendum, they went way up.
No, they came way down.
Yeah,
they came way down.
Way down.
They came, we were over 200 when we started with our first
244.
Yeah, well, it went down, but it was way above what the original budget was, wasn't it?
It was above where we were trying to, because originally, the first numbers were based on everything being equal, so that's what set the tone of a problem for the district. We tried to get budget numbers for everything's four section of schools, everything's equal, everything's this. That produced those numbers that were way to the right. It wasn't until after that process went public that the second layer of refinement started bringing those down. That's where those school campuses evolved out of that process. So it's
I think
brought it
Jeff
down.
went back to those original presentations and said, oh, everything should be about $150 million.
Well, we were trying to hit that mark. That was an original unfounded goal.
What I think might be helpful for, maybe we've said it before, but maybe people haven't taken it, is what our process is in terms of when the board is going to vote on something that is going to go on the ballot and work backwards, because the confusion that we're getting now is the discussions and the data we're going to get is just to help understand what these configurations mean, how they get presented, how they get fine-tuned. It's not like we're going to come up with a configuration now that is going to survive until March of next year.
Right.
It's a process by which we're going to start the vetting of the costs and the models with the board in the forum, and then fine-tune it until we get to a point where they are ultimately voting, which is
Here in the late September, October is when we have to have a single one, so the board has at least 2 meetings to go to the public, have a meeting, have some comments.
October, November.
Yeah, so your October, probably the latest, the board has to be making, or the board has to make a decision on a model. So you back that up to say that July, August, this group needs to hand over at the beginning of July 3 models, pick a number, could be 2, could be 4. 3 configurations to the board to say, here's what we think, we've refined through all of our education facilities, the finance numbers come back. So in June, July, that's when it goes to the board's hands and say, here's what we think, here's what we take forward and do another layer of refinement on costing. Now you're doing boundaries, you're doing busing, you're doing everything else that goes with the schools besides just the shell.
Or instead of our fingerprints all over it, it's their fingerprints all over it.
It's also important, when we present this to the public, when we talk about it at the forum, it's also important to say, okay, this costs X amount of dollars, but here's the benefit to it, or here's the con to it. Not just throw out dollar amounts.
No, you gotta have some cost benefit.
Darren, I think that's important, especially for the mailer. Just when we create this roadmap, it's like the end goal is not to have configurations that are going to,
or whatever.
Right, that are pristine, that won't be changed. I think that's important to.
It's just to get feedback on where things are directionally going. And we always talk about the cost being, the number matters, but it matters when it's compared to the other numbers as well. So is it high, medium, or low versus is it $10 million difference? I don't think that's a deciding factor. I think it's going to be is it 200 plus, is it 50 and down? I mean, that's the direction we need to go. And most of these models are going to come within a pretty tight range of not really being materially different. It's going to be, I believe, based on the facilities, unless you're talking about 10 months.
Start talking new schools.
Right.
New schools.
Right. So that's really what we have to be vetting with community budgets.
We'll know a lot more soon.
Those additions are expensive. Additions are really bad behavior.
Yeah. That's.
They are.
Depends on your values.
Yeah.
With that, are we good?
When's our next meeting?
Next Tuesday is the board workshop. We'll work out an agenda with the board and the executive committee.
And those are earlier, John, those are 6:30 or something?
We will confirm that with the board.
No meeting Monday.
No. Just a reminder on that, we set this up a while ago, the meetings for the months have been Monday, Tuesday, Monday, Wednesday. Just so not all meetings were Mondays, because people couldn't attend, just Mondays. So that's why we had that staggered, and that board workshop was put in there back in January, February, to help the synergy issues we're having. That's really not happening so much anymore, but we're still keeping this form to set a tone with the new board.
For sure. And John, can I just ask that you send out just in like that agenda form, the schedule for the next, for May and June, because I've gotten a couple of inquiries from people who are having trouble with the Google Cal, just so that they can import it in whatever calendar they follow. Awesome. Dan, did you want to say something?
It's a pass.
Rick.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment about our role going forward. The board and board committees cannot advocate for or against a referendum. They can merely educate. So words matter. We should never discuss the concept that 2.0 might advocate one way or the other. If individual members are going to decide to do something along those lines, for or against, they have the option of doing so outside of this framework.
So toward that end, that's actually a really, I'll let Melissa handle this one.
No, you were.
Okay, no, go for it.
Actually, guys, that is something that we kind of wanted to touch on anyway, especially for like the new members who haven't been with us for so long, that, sometimes things come up on social media, people throw out ideas, this and that, and you have the urge to like sort of weigh in. Just make sure, as Rick said, that our role is educational. We can redirect people to our webpage. We can say, hey, check out our minutes from this date and link different things. But we don't want to say, we don't necessarily want to answer questions specifically about buildings or specifically about configurations when we have not yet presented anything to the board. So it kind of keeps coming up where there's something out there in social media and people think we've presented it, but we have not. So we need to just clarify what
Don't
happened.
represent yourself as 2.0.
I would say, well, even if you don't represent yourself as 2.0, people see you as 2.0. So I would say, short of redirecting attention to the minutes, the videos, the formal communication from 2.0, we don't need to say anything.
Yeah.
I think that's great advice, because I think there was a lot of damage done in the past.
That's exactly right, and you can't unring a bell.
To the disadvantage of the board, even if it wasn't their intent.
So words matter, guys.
For sure. Thank you for
But
bringing
feel
that
free
up.
to direct people to Nicholas or, or whatever.
Yes.
If you get into somebody who wants to know more information, feel free to send it to him, because he should be the district's formal point of contact.
And it's weird, like there are certain people who are so much more comfortable communicating on Facebook than they are anywhere else. We have a Facebook page. I would love to see some activity there. So that's, if they want to have a conversation, tell them, post a question to the 2.0 page.
Yeah.
And it'll get answered.
Redirect them to a source of information or education, rather than trying to take it on in an individual back and forth of some kind.
For sure.
So I think at this point, people are not able to post directly to the 2.0 page. It was initially set up so that visitor posts appear sort of in a secret column to the right. So if you do actually wish to somehow have community conversations there that are initiated by community members, you need to change that setting.
We could change that setting, or we could just have the keeper of the 2.0 page repost.
You could do that, sure.
Is that Rocky or is that Nicholas? Who's the keeper of the page?
I think it's a secret. Say it on video.
I'm,
That's
I'm happy.
But for now, the message should be, get informed, go to forums.
Yeah.
That has to be the consistent message.
Get good information.
Get good
Get good
information.
information.
Here are the places you can seek out information, you can learn, get involved, get informed. That's the message to our house.
And that until we present it to the board, it is not,
There's nothing.
there's nothing, there's nothing specific. But it's very important too that everyone understands that we will show decisions and stuff to the board before we will.
Yeah, this whole thing about process is not just talk, it's by word and by deed, I think. So with that,
Well, so sorry, one more thing. So if I hear you correctly, you're also suggesting that people think carefully about what other school-related conversations they intervene on in social media, particularly on the sounding board page, right? Is that kind of what you're saying?
There are a few different pages and, like you see different things floating around.
What I'm getting at is like many people in this room have posted over the past months that it's not just the former process that was negatively impacted by this. It's our process, even as recently as a few months ago. So I just want to.
For people being on the south.
Yeah, I just want to endorse what you're saying. That
oh, and I mean, there was a situation in the last 2 weeks where someone not on 2.0 posted something that then caused a board member to ask, why are we getting information from social media instead of 2.0? Because we hadn't formalized anything. And so that, to Melissa's point, if we haven't presented it to the board, it's not ready for prime time. It's a conversation, it's in play, but
It's in play, and they can find that out on the minutes.
it's all in public too.
But I go so far as to say that if somebody even wanted to share an article or a statistic, people read things into that stuff. You should just think very carefully about what you do on social media because it impacts all of us. Just
And the integrity
Kittens,
of the
pictures of your
playground.
kids, like.
I'm not saying on your personal page, I'm saying on these pages, right? Share kittens, go crazy.
Yes, so with that, Melissa pointed out one more thing we have to do at 9:15.
Right.
Before I ask for a motion to adjourn.
We'd
We
like to
wanna
say a big
thank
thank you. Yep, to Art, to Alex, Adam, Dan, for all of your contributions, your leadership.
Move on to the Board of Education, we are grateful, really.
Well, thanks to you guys for all the heavy lifting that you do.
You guys put so much work in, and I think we all want to support your efforts because you guys are doing a great job. So thank you.
Looking forward to ongoing collaboration. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
All in favor? We out.